want to give it no energy like that, but I, I'm gonna speak for myself. Me. This is not her speaking. This is me speaking. I've gotten to a place in my life where things start to transform from face to frequency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's it. And I love people, and I love them with as much as I have to give. So if my cup is empty, I'm not going to be pouring to you. I have to go put more in my cup. And what I mean by changing from face to frequency is that you might know somebody, you might grow up with somebody, you might be family members with somebody, you might be friends, you might, whatever it looked like. Cantor Simmons, shouts out to Cantor Simmons. He's one of my best men. The faces of who and the realities of relationships fade away, and then you start to be more attracted to the frequency that you are on. And I'm not out here looking for what looks nice. I'm not out here looking for what smells nice or what feels nice. I'm looking for what is frequency nice. So I don't care about none of that anything. If you're not matching that, I will pour into you my extra, but I'm not putting myself at a deficit or letting you like sap all my good energy, make me sad, make me upset, have me engaging in triggers and all of that, and talking down about people or talking gossiping or calling people like they name or fighting or any of that. I ain't doing it, bruh.
Nope.
I ain't doing it.
Myself.
I don't care who you are. Yep. I don't care if you my mama, my sister, my twin, Jesus. It don't matter.
Yeah.
I ain't spending 2 seconds on that junk. And I love you and I mean it. I wish the best for you. I hope you find all the happiness in your life. But everybody at this house, them 2 kids and that woman upstairs that I'm responsible for, we not plugging into that. I don't care what it is.
Nope. We're not plugging. We're not pouring. We're not entertaining. We're not doing any of that. And what people need to understand is it's not our responsibility to nurture your triggers. That's no one's responsibility but yours. Period.
Yep.
We're not coddling anything other than peace, happiness, and joy. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. And if you can't vibrate up, then you have to vibrate out.
That's it. And here's the thing. This is not coming from a place of hate, meanness. I will speak for myself. I sincerely, from the core of who I am, hope that every spirit, soul on this earth finds their purpose, finds their passion, finds the people that support them, finds the people that encourages them, that cheerleads for them, and that they can do that for everyone else in their circle and be led by their source.
Right.
That's what I want for everybody.
Right.
I just do. And ain't nothing you gonna do gonna change that. But what I have control over, me, and what I would allow in my space, in my home, on my phone, in my car, like I have a choice to make there.
Yeah.
And that choice is love. That choice is peace. I've tried before. I've tried to pull people. I've tried to be like, hey, let me show you. I'm not doing that. And she ain't doing it either. And we love you. We rather look towards the hills for what's coming our hill.
Come on now. Come on, honey.
It's Good Friday.
Towanda Braxton, exposed by her ex-husband Tamar, was right. Listen, stop what you're doing right now, because this is not regular celebrity tea. This is the kind of bombshell that makes Hollywood go silent and families go into lockdown mode. Overnight, One name exploded across timelines, group chats, and private DMs like a 5-alarm fire: Towanda Braxton. And the reason? Her own ex-husband allegedly stepped out of the shadows and blew the lid off secrets fans were never supposed to hear. Not rumors. Not vague shade. We're talking alleged receipts, private conversations, and claims so explosive they've forced people to ask the unthinkable question: was Tamar Braxton right this whole time? What started as a harmless, live stream has now spiraled into something way darker. Spiritual language turned into public condemnation. Family loyalty turned into strategic silence. And behind it all, insiders claim there's a trail of money, manipulation, and narrative control that paints a completely different picture of who the real villain might be. Fans are re-watching old episodes in
point. Do I defend myself? You could just get exhausted with the same behavior over and over and over again. I know I was exhausted, and it wasn't warranted, and I'm not excusing it, and I'm not willing to accept that behavior anymore in my
belief. Tweets are being deleted. Clips are resurfacing that suddenly feel less dramatic and more prophetic. Because when the man who knew Towanda at her most private allegedly starts talking, every carefully built image begins to crack. And the most chilling part. Sources say this is only the beginning. There are whispers of more messages. More audio. More truths that were buried to protect reputations. Reputations that may not survive what's coming next. So buckle up. Because once this story starts unraveling, there's no turning back, and by the end of it, the Braxton legacy may never look the same again. The moment Towanda Braxton's ex-husband allegedly decided to speak, everything shifted. What fans thought was another cycle of Braxton family tension suddenly felt like the first crack in a dam that had been holding back years of resentment, secrets, and carefully curated silence. According to multiple insiders, this wasn't an impulsive rant or a bitter ex lashing out. This was calculated, quiet, and devastating. Because when he stepped forward, he didn't just question behavior, he questioned the entire narrative that had been sold to the public for years. The narrative where Tamar was too much, unstable, exhausting, and Towanda was the calm, spiritual, long-suffering sister trying to keep the peace. Insiders claim the ex-husband told close friends that what people saw on television was only a fraction of the truth. Behind closed doors, he allegedly watched Tamar be painted as the problem while others benefited from her silence, her loyalty, and her money. He reportedly said the family dynamic depended on one person absorbing the blame, so everyone else could maintain their image. And that person, over and over again, was Tamar. What set the internet on fire was the resurfacing of old clips right after his alleged comments began circulating. Tamar crying, begging to be understood. Tamar walking off sets. Tamar being labeled dramatic by fans and even her own sisters. At the time, viewers laughed, rolled their eyes, and blamed her temperament. Now, with this new context, those same moments feel uncomfortable to watch. Almost sinister. Because if what's being alleged is true, those weren't tantrums. They were pressure leaks. The ex-husband allegedly revealed that finances were the first major fracture point. Not because Tamar didn't want to help, but because help slowly turned into expectation. Sources say Tamar gave money freely, often framing it as gifts, just to avoid conflict. But behind the scenes, questions allegedly started piling up. Where was the money going? Why were there new requests before old ones were addressed? And why, according to alleged messages, was Tamar discouraged from asking too many questions, because it would trigger unnecessary drama? Then came the claims about credit. Fans already knew rumors, but insiders say the ex-husband confirmed Tamar's name appearing in financial paperwork wasn't accidental. He allegedly claimed Tamar was pulled into situations she didn't fully consent to, all while being reassured it was temporary and handled. The most chilling part, according to people who heard his account, is that Tamar allegedly trusted her sister enough not to double-check everything. That trust, he implied, became a weapon against her. As these allegations spread, social media went nuclear. Twitter threads dissected every financial argument ever shown on the show. TikToks compared Tamar's complaints to bankruptcy timelines. Fans who once defended Towanda began asking why accountability always skipped her and landed squarely on Tamar's shoulders. Others pushed back, accusing the internet of rewriting history and vilifying a woman based on one man's claims. But doubt had already been planted, and doubt spreads faster than facts. The wedding controversy reignited everything. Towanda publicly stated Tamar chose not to attend, brushing it off as her decision. But insiders allege the ex-husband said Tamar was never invited. Not as punishment, but as prevention. Prevention from questions. Prevention from tension. Prevention from energy disruption. That language alone sent fans spiraling. Because it mirrored the spiritual framing Towanda and her husband later used publicly, positioning Tamar as something to be protected against rather than protected. When the live stream surfaced of Towanda and her husband talking about vibrating out people who don't match their frequency, fans initially applauded the self-care message. But in hindsight, the timing felt pointed. According to alleged insider context, this wasn't general philosophy. It was justification. A way to spiritually sanitize exclusion while avoiding direct accountability. And once fans connected that to Tamar's exclusion from family milestones, the optics became brutal. Then came the alleged audio snippet that stopped people cold. A voice believed to be Towanda's, casual and unbothered, acknowledging money used for a house down payment and implying repayment was never part of the plan. Whether real or not, the clip went viral within hours. Comment sections exploded with disbelief. Because if that voice was authentic, it contradicted years of public explanations and reframed Tamar's frustration as completely rational. Celebrity reactions poured gasoline on the fire. Subtle likes, cryptic tweets, deleted comments that only fueled speculation. One industry insider allegedly messaged a blogger saying, "You're finally catching up." Tamar herself stayed mostly quiet, which fans found louder than any statement. Her past interviews began circulating again, especially moments where she said she felt used, but didn't want to expose family business. Those clips hit differently now. According to people close to Tamar, she spent years trying to resolve things privately. Therapy, mediation, boundaries. But each attempt allegedly ended with her being told she was the common denominator. Too emotional. Too loud. Too reactive. The ex-husband's alleged account reframed that criticism as gaslighting. Not addressing the behavior, but discrediting the person reacting to it. As the narrative cracked, fans began questioning why Towanda's husband was so vocal publicly. He married into the family, yet he positioned himself as a moral authority, spiritually diagnosing Tamar on live streams. Critics argued he was speaking from one side of a story he didn't live from childhood. Supporters claimed he was just defending his wife. But the damage was done. The lines were drawn. Behind the scenes, sources claim Towanda's camp went into crisis mode. Calls to publicists. Debates over whether responding would validate the allegations. Silence was chosen, at least initially. But silence in the age of viral receipts is rarely neutral. It reads as strategy. Or fear. And just when the outrage seemed to plateau, one final detail allegedly surfaced that sent chills through the fandom. The ex-husband reportedly told someone that Towanda once said Tamar would never really expose everything, because she loved her family too much. If true, That single sentence reframed years of conflict as calculated. By the time the first wave of outrage settled, the story didn't cool down, it mutated. What began as whispered allegations suddenly turned into a full-blown digital inquisition, with fans, bloggers, and so-called insiders tearing through years of footage like forensic analysts at a crime scene. Every smile, every pause, every tense silence from old Braxton episodes was reinterpreted under a new lens. And the more people looked, the more uncomfortable the pattern seemed to become. Tamar wasn't just the loud one. She was the one reacting to something no one wanted to name. Sources claim this was the moment Tamar allegedly stopped protecting the narrative behind the scenes. Not publicly, yet, but privately. According to people close to her, she started letting things circulate without stopping them. No frantic calls to bloggers. No denials. No family first cleanup. That alone sent a message louder than any interview ever could. Because when someone who's been accused of being reckless suddenly goes silent, people start wondering who she was really protecting all those years. Then came the supposed insider leaks. Screenshots allegedly showing Tamar questioning financial timelines, asking why certain accounts were still open, why her name was connected to obligations she didn't recognize. The responses, according to those leaks, weren't explanations. They were deflections. "We'll talk later. Don't stress. You're making this bigger than it needs to be." Fans immediately recognized the language. It was the same tone Towanda used publicly when dismissing Tamar's concerns as emotional overreactions. That realization hit hard, because it suggested the public gaslighting had a private blueprint. Social media exploded again when a former associate, claiming proximity to the family during peak reality TV years, posted an anonymous thread describing a designated disruptor. Someone whose job, knowingly or not, was to absorb conflict so the brand could survive. According to that thread, Tamar was allowed to be chaotic because chaos made good television, but off camera, that chaos was used against her. Every boundary she tried to set became proof she was difficult. Every emotional response became justification to exclude her from decisions that directly affected her life. The wedding issue resurfaced with fresh venom. New alleged messages circulated suggesting the decision not to invite Tamar was finalized weeks before the public narrative was crafted. The excuse? She'll make it about her. Fans immediately pushed back. How does someone make something about themselves when they don't even know it's happening? The math didn't math, and the internet smelled blood. Because if exclusion came first and explanation came later, then the story about Tamar choosing not to attend wasn't just misleading. It was a cover. At the same time, Towanda's spiritual framing started drawing harsher criticism. Viewers replayed the live where Tamar was labeled negative energy, wicked, someone to be vibrated away from. Critics argued that spiritual language was being used as armor. You can't argue with frequency. You can't cross-examine vibration. It turns accountability into something metaphysical and therefore untouchable. Fans called it the cleanest way to morally dismiss someone without ever addressing what they're actually saying. Then came the alleged meltdown behind closed doors. Sources claim Towanda was blindsided by how quickly public sentiment shifted. For years, Tamar had been the easy target. This time, the internet wasn't buying it. According to insiders, emergency calls were made to clarify narratives, but each attempt only reopened wounds. Because every explanation led back to the same unresolved questions: the money, the credit, the exclusion, and the expectation of silence. Celebrity reactions escalated the tension. A well-known talk show host reportedly unfollowed Towanda overnight. A former co-star allegedly texted a blogger saying, "This is bigger than people think." Even subtle moves felt loud. Fans interpreted every digital breadcrumb as proof that the industry had known something was off, but chose comfort over confrontation. Meanwhile, Tamar's past interviews became haunting. One clip in particular went viral, Tamar saying she felt like she had to pay to belong. At the time, it sounded metaphorical. Now, fans are dissecting it literally. Comment sections filled with apologies from people who once called her ungrateful. "We didn't listen. We owe you one. You weren't crazy." The emotional whiplash was intense. According to sources close to Towanda's ex-husband, he didn't expect the public to side so quickly with Tamar. He allegedly believed people were too invested in the old narrative to question it. That miscalculation, insiders say, is why more information started leaking. Not strategically, but defensively. When the tide turns, people scramble to control the damage, and that's when stories slip. One particularly explosive claim suggested that Tamar had once been warned not to air out certain issues, because it would affect everyone's opportunities. If true, that places her silence in a darker context. Not loyalty. Pressure. The kind that tells you speaking up will cost you not just family, but livelihood. Fans called it emotional extortion. Others said it was the unspoken rule of reality TV families: protect the brand or become the villain. The backlash against Towanda's husband intensified as well. Critics argued he overstepped by leading a public takedown of a family dynamic he married into. Supporters insisted he was simply echoing what he witnessed. But that defense only raised another question. If what he saw was so troubling, why frame Tamar as the problem instead of the behavior? That question lingered unanswered, and silence followed. Behind the scenes, sources claim Tamar was weighing her options. Not emotionally, but strategically. The rumor mill churned with talk of a sit-down interview, a book chapter, even legal consultation. Nothing confirmed. But the possibility alone shifted the power dynamic. Because once someone realizes their story has value, silence stops being protection, and starts feeling like self-betrayal. And then, late one night, a cryptic post appeared from an account closely associated with the ex-husband. It read, "The truth doesn't need volume. It needs timing." The post was deleted within minutes, but screenshots spread like wildfire. Fans interpreted it as a warning shot. Not everything was out. Not yet. And whatever was coming next wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be precise. As the internet waited, the pressure mounted. Towanda remained publicly quiet. Tamar remained publicly composed. But behind that calm, insiders say lines were being drawn. Because once the story reaches this point, it stops being about public opinion and starts being about control of the narrative. And control, once lost, is almost impossible to reclaim. That's where everything froze, right on the edge of the next reveal. Because if what's rumored to be coming actually surfaces, it won't just challenge what fans believe about one sister. It will force everyone to reconsider who benefited from the chaos, who paid the price for peace, and why the loudest person in the room is so often the one hiding the deepest wound. By the time dawn broke on what fans were calling the longest scandal cycle in Braxton history, the energy had shifted from outrage to anticipation. This was no longer about picking sides. This was about waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because insiders were now whispering that the story wasn't escalating by accident. It was being paced. Carefully. Deliberately. And the people who thought this would blow over in a few viral days were suddenly realizing they had underestimated how much truth had been sitting just beneath the surface. According to multiple sources, Tamar reached a breaking point that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with clarity. Those close to her claim she finally understood something devastating. No matter how quiet she stayed, the narrative about her would never improve. Silence hadn't protected her reputation. It had allowed others to define it. And once that realization settled in, the emotional weight reportedly lifted. Because when you stop trying to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you, you gain something dangerous: freedom. That's when the tone allegedly changed behind the scenes. Tamar wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't begging. She wasn't defending herself. Insiders say she started asking one question over and over: what's actually documented? Not what was said. Not what was implied. What was provable? That question alone sent shockwaves through private conversations. Because stories can be spun. Documents can't. Rumors began circulating that Tamar had quietly compiled timelines: financial, personal, contractual. Not to expose for revenge, but to protect herself if things went nuclear. And fans sensed it. Her social media presence became calm, almost serene. No subtweets. No shade. Just distance. And distance, in scandals like this, often signals preparation. Meanwhile, pressure on Towanda intensified. The silence that once felt strategic started to feel suffocating. Comment sections flooded with demands for accountability, not explanations. Because fans weren't asking, "Did this happen?" anymore. They were asking, "Why hasn't this been addressed?" And every unanswered question made the allegations feel heavier, more believable. Insiders claim this is when internal fractures began to show. Not publicly, but privately. Family members allegedly disagreed on how to respond. Some pushed for a blanket denial. Others feared that denying too much would invite receipts. Because if even one claim could be verified, the fallout wouldn't be about Tamar anymore. It would be about credibility. Then came the moment fans didn't see but felt. A noticeable shift in industry behavior. Invitations allegedly stopped coming. Conversations reportedly paused. People who once eagerly aligned themselves with the peaceful sister narrative began distancing quietly. In Hollywood, that kind of subtle withdrawal speaks louder than any press release. It says, "We're waiting to see how this ends." At the same time, sympathy for Tamar reached a level it never had before. Fans began reframing her entire public history. The outbursts, the tears, the intensity. Instead of flaws, they were reinterpreted as survival mechanisms. Reactions to prolonged invalidation. Emotional responses from someone who felt unheard in rooms where decisions were made about her life without her. One viral thread summed it up bluntly: she wasn't crazy. She was cornered. That sentence alone spread faster than any alleged leak. Because it captured what people were finally willing to admit: that the family dynamic rewarded composure, even when it came at someone else's expense. According to sources close to Towanda's ex-husband, even he didn't anticipate how deeply the public would interrogate the system rather than the individuals. His alleged intention, insiders say, was to defend choices, not dismantle a narrative. But once the machine started turning, it didn't stop at one voice. It pulled in history, context, and patterns no one could unsee. Then came the rumor that changed everything. Whispers of a potential legal boundary being crossed. Nothing confirmed. No filings. Just quiet speculation that certain financial entanglements may not have been as consensual or transparent as publicly portrayed. That rumor alone was enough to shift the tone from gossip to seriousness. Because once legality enters the chat, jokes stop landing. Fans began urging Tamar to speak, but others urged her not to. Let them hang themselves, one comment read. And that sentiment gained traction. Because every day that passed without a clear rebuttal allowed the story to breathe, to grow, to harden into belief. And belief, once solidified, doesn't need proof to feel real. Tawanda's spiritual language, once her shield, now felt brittle. Critics argued that true accountability doesn't hide behind metaphors. It addresses specifics. And the absence of specifics became the loudest detail of all. Because when someone is falsely accused, they usually rush to clarify. When they don't, people start asking why. Insiders say Tamar was advised to wait. To let the cycle complete itself. Because public opinion, once flipped, rarely flips back without a catalyst. And if she spoke too soon, she'd risk becoming the emotional one again. The irony wasn't lost on her supporters. Silence, the very thing used against her, had become her strongest position. Then, just as attention threatened to drift, one final detail resurfaced that snapped everyone back. An old clip. Easy to miss before. Tamar saying, "I'm tired of paying for peace." That line hit like a punch to the chest. Because it reframed the entire saga. Peace wasn't mutual. It was purchased. And the cost was her voice. As the story stands now, nothing is officially resolved. No statements. No apologies. No admissions. But the damage is already done. Because the public no longer sees a simple family feud. They see a system that functioned because one person was willing to be the villain so others could be comfortable. And the most unsettling part. According to insiders, Tamar isn't planning a dramatic reveal. No explosive interview. No tell-all, yet. She's letting the narrative collapse under its own contradictions. Letting people arrive at the truth without being pushed. Because when people think they discovered something themselves, they defend it harder. That's where this chapter ends. Not with closure, but with a standoff. One side waiting for the storm to pass. The other realized the storm changed the landscape permanently. And fans, watching in real time, understand that some truths don't need to be screamed. They just need to be seen. Because if this saga has proven anything, it's this: being labeled difficult is often the price of refusing to be used. And history has a habit of being kinder to the person who finally stops playing their assigned role. The question now isn't whether Tamar was right. The question is who's ready for what happens when the person you underestimated no longer needs your permission to be heard. If you're still watching right now, understand this. You are officially part of a moment people are going to reference for years. This isn't just another messy celebrity headline you scroll past and forget. This is one of those stories where the truth keeps unfolding in layers, and the people who stay locked in from the beginning are the ones who won't be gaslit when the next revelation drops. Because make no mistake, this is not over. Not even close. So don't sit on the sidelines. Hit that like button because it tells the algorithm this conversation matters, and that these stories don't get buried. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the comment section is where the real truth-telling happens. Were you Team Tamar before this? Did your perspective change? Or do you think there's still more we haven't seen yet? Say it out loud. Silence is how narratives get rewritten, and this one is already fighting to be controlled. And if you're not subscribed, you're playing yourself. When the next leak surfaces, when someone finally breaks their silence, when receipts turn into confirmation, this channel is where it's going to land first. Turn on notifications, so you don't miss the moment everyone else is scrambling to catch up and pretending they always knew. Because stories like this don't come with warnings. They drop suddenly, shift everything, and expose who was paying attention. Stay connected. Stay watching. And stay ready, because the next chapter isn't going to be gentle, and you don't want to hear about it.